Afternoon, friends. Ash here, WAT News. I wanted to do a quick video uh, because Sidney Powell just went on today on to Maria Bartiromo and made some incredible allegations. CIA may have used Dominion for its own benefit. And by the way, I believe I read that Sidney Powell was also appointed to Donald Trump's legal team. So let's listen to this video. It's about 6 minutes long, and then I'm going to show you a couple things I found that were interesting. And I'm going to also go into the 1968 election for a second because I think there's some interesting parallels. And we'll get into that later. So let me just start the video here.
Who's part of President Trump's legal team. Sidney, before we went to the break, we talked about, you said that there may have been kickbacks to some people who accepted the Dominion software. Tell me what you mean.
Well, I mean, we are collecting evidence now from various whistleblowers that are aware of substantial sums of money being given to family members of state officials who bought this software. I mean, we're talking about $100 million packages for new voting machines suddenly in multiple states, and benefits ranging from financial benefits for family members to sort of what I would call election insurance. Because they know that they can win the election if they are using that software. It's really an insidious, corrupt system, and I can't tell you how livid I am with our government for not paying attention to complaints even brought by Democrats, Carolyn Maloney, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, over the last several years in written letters with expert reports and some documentation of how corrupt this software is, and nobody in our government has paid any attention to it, which makes me wonder how much the CIA has used it for its own benefit in different places, and why Gina Haspel is still there in the CIA is beyond my comprehension. She should be fired immediately.
Which governor or which government official accepted hundreds of millions of dollars in benefits for their family as they took on this software?
If I said hundreds of millions of dollars there, I misspoke. I don't know the exact amount of money yet. We are still collecting the evidence on that, but it's more than one.
Okay, so you can't say who you believe took kickbacks. What is the CIA's role? Why do you think Gina Haspel should be fired immediately? You're saying that the CIA is behind the Dominion or Smartmatic voting software as well?
Well, the CIA and the FBI and other government organizations have received multiple reports of wrongdoing and failures and vulnerabilities in this company's product. Their own manual, if you sat down and read it, would explain how and why no honest person would use this system. And it's not just Dominion. There are other companies in the voting machine business in this country, too, that may very well and are likely using the same software. We've detected voting irregularities that are inexplicable and align with these problems in other states that think they have valid systems. But the people who bought the Dominion system, for sure, knew exactly what they were getting. It should never have been installed anywhere. And we are going to show the public exactly how rotten the entire state is.
Now, I have spoken with a few whistleblowers myself this weekend, and one source who is an IT specialist told me that he knows the software and specifically advised people in Texas, officials in Texas, not to use it. And yet, he was overruled. He said that there was an unusual patch that was put into the software while it was live, and it's highly unusual to put a patch in there. Is that what you're referring to? Tell me how it's done and how these back doors work.
Okay, that's part of it. They can stick a thumb drive in the machine or upload software to it, even from the internet. They can do it from Germany or Venezuela even. They can remote access anything. They can watch votes in real time. They can shift votes in real time. We've identified mathematically the exact algorithm they used and plan to use from the beginning to modify the votes in this case to make sure Biden won. That's why he said he didn't need your votes now, he would need you later. He was right. I mean, in his demented state, he had no filter and he was speaking the truth more than once, including when he said he had the largest voter fraud organization ever. Well, it's massive election fraud. It's going to undo the entire election. And they can do anything they want with the votes. They can have the machines not read the signature. They can have the machines not read the down ballot. They can make the machines read and catalog only the Biden votes. It's like drag and drop whatever you want, wherever you want, upload votes. In fact, we've got math in Michigan and Pennsylvania, I think it is, that all of a sudden hundreds of thousands of votes at a 67% ratio for Biden, 23% for Trump were uploaded multiple times into the system.
And Sidney, you say you have an affidavit from someone who knows how this system works and was there with the planning of it. You believe you can prove this in court?
Yes. We have essentially a sworn statement from a witness who knew exactly how it worked from the beginning, why it was designed to work that way, and saw when things started shutting down and they started, stopped counting the votes here, that was the same play that had worked in other countries.
Wow, this is explosive, and we certainly will continue to follow it. Sidney, thank you so much for your work. We will be catching up with you soon. Thank you so much. We'll be watching.
Thank you, Maria. You can be assured Rudy and I will stay on it.
Okay.
Wow. So that's a pretty mind-blowing interview, because if you caught the last part, what she said, we have the algorithm that they used. So if they have the algorithm, I mean, there's your intent, right? If they can show in the code or wherever they wrote in to whatever the algorithm is written into, right, for the computer code, for it to do whatever they want it to do, like say put 3% in off the top or whatever, and they have that code and they have the, it sounds, there's a lot of allegations in that. So I wanted to also go into what she was talking about, because some of the allegations do check out. CIA has interfered with over 81 foreign elections in the past century. This is from hangthebankers.com. I kind of like that title. But what's interesting is the U.S. has a history of attempting to influence presidential elections in other countries. It's done so as many as 81 times between 1946 and 2000, according to a database amassed by political scientist Dov Levin of Carnegie Mellon. And I thought I had that database somewhere. Did I pulled it up, or did I find it yet? I didn't find it yet. Sorry about that. But I wanted to go to this article also, so I'll go, you can look up that database. But what was interesting was I saw this little thing about CIA Director Haspel not included in Trump's intelligence briefing on Friday. President Trump's in-person daily intelligence briefing on Friday did not include CIA Director Gina Haspel, whose job has been on the line, according to several current and former officials familiar with the situation. The meeting was organized by DNI John Ratcliffe. So, in an email message, Grinnell denied that he was pushing for Haspel's ouster. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. I found another article about the video. Trump lawyer connects CIA to Dominion voter fraud conspiracy theory, says Director Haspel should be fired immediately. So already it's been they've been trying to title it a conspiracy, which it's not a conspiracy, it's an allegation. And we'll see if the allegation is true. Starting to appear that it may be, right? Officials raised concerns for years about security of U.S. voting machines, software systems. So this backs up what Sidney's talking about, right? She said that Democrats and Republicans had both voiced concerns. And that's correct. Dominion voting systems, which has been used in multiple states where fraud has been alleged in the 2020 election, was rejected 3 times by data communications experts from the Texas Secretary of State and Attorney General's office for failing to meet basic security standards. Unlike Texas, other states certified the use of the system, including Pennsylvania, where voter fraud has been alleged on multiple accounts this week. And what's the basically biggest state that's hinging in this whole thing? It's Pennsylvania, right? I believe this is also used in New York. Canadian company, as we know, headquartered in Denver, is one of the three companies primarily used in U.S. elections. The others are election systems and software, and Texas-based Hart Intercivic. Dominion system was implemented in North Carolina, where there was also a late reporting, and Nevada, where we also have problems, where election results are being challenged, and in Georgia, and in Michigan, where a glitch, quote unquote, that occurred reversed thousands of votes for Republican President Donald Trump to Democrat Joe Biden. While Biden declared victory Saturday in his U.S. presidential race against Trump, the Trump campaign is launching several challenges to vote counts in states across the country alleging fraud. New Mexico used this in 2013, the first year it was rejected by Texas. So that's just funny, isn't it? The state right next to you, right near you, rejects it, and you say, hey, why not? We'll use it. Seems like a strange choice, but so Dominion got into trouble with several subsidiaries it used over alleged cases of fraud. One subsidiary is Smartmatic, a company that has played a significant role in the U.S. market over the last decade. So as you can see, there is a lot of these allegations are turning out to be correct. They're not really an allegation; they're turning out to be a fact. Was there problems with Dominion? Yeah. Were there other states that turned down Dominion's product because they felt that it wasn't secure? Yeah. So that's not fact. That's not a conspiracy theory. You know, did the CIA use this? We're not sure of the extent that it used it, but we do know that the CIA has meddled in other countries' elections. That's fairly well established. We know that the CIA tried to kill certain leaders like Castro many, many different times and failed. You can go look that up. They even tried to poison his ice cream once. I read it once somewhere. The Castro used to go get to this ice cream place all the time. So they put some poison in the ice cream in like some kind of a cylinder, like some kind of thing, right? That was supposed to dissolve, and it didn't work because they put it in the freezer, and the freezer messed it up or something. Who knows how many of these stories are real or not, right? But you can go back and look up into this stuff more, and just go even look into the Vietnam War and different places, different countries over time, different countries' elections, and you could see how if you have control of certain election product like this, it can be a real easy way to manipulate a vote. So Sidney Powell makes this allegation. Just the news. Congressional Democrats had raised security concerns about Dominion, other voting machine companies. Senator Elizabeth Warren and three other Hill Democrats said in a series of letters to investment firms that voting machine companies, quote, have long skimped on security in favor of convenience. This is by Daniel Payne, November 14th. Democratic leaders of Congress warned last year in a series of letters that election technology companies such as Dominion voting systems were, quote, prone to security problems as a result of them having purportedly, quote, long skimped on security in favor of convenience. The allegations were detailed in a series of letters sent in December 2019 by Democratic Senators Elizabeth Warren, Ron Wyden, and Amy Klobuchar, along with Democratic Rep. Mark Pocan. The letters were addressed to several capital investment groups that had purchased shares in numerous election software companies. Among those companies was Dominion Voting Systems, stakes in which have been acquired by Staple Street Capital Group in New York City. Dominion has been plagued by reports of glitchy software in at least several voting jurisdictions throughout the country since Election Day 2020. Dominion has categorically denied reports of fraudulent software on its system, stating that there has been no evidence that its voting systems were in any way compromised. Last year, however, the Democratic leaders were less certain of that security. We have concerns about the spread and effect of private equity investment in many sectors of the economy, the politicians wrote, including the election technology industry. an integral part of our nation's democratic process. We are particularly concerned, they continued, quoting several news reports, that secretive and trouble-plagued companies owned by private equity firms and responsible for manufacturing and maintaining voting machines and other election administration equipment, quote, have long skimped on security in favor of convenience, leaving voting systems across the country prone to security problems. Yeah, so we've long known this, but of course it's not been addressed, and now even in the 2018 election where there was massive problems and a lot of people were intimating that were they being watching that whole thing go down so that the 2020 election would be secured. I wanted to go back into the 1968 election for a second because there's some interesting, if you go back to something called the National Election Service, which was set up, well, I'll go to this article first that I looked up because what happened in 1968 was there was a glitch in the system. And a gentleman named Dick Gregory, who's passed away, was running for president as an outsider, and somehow he got 9% of the vote in Pennsylvania, I believe it was. Now, this glitch that they said, of course, they were examined it, and he didn't get 9% of the vote, but somehow the system had glitched up. And this system had been set up by a guy, and his name is Frank J. Jordan, I believe was his name, manager of the election planning. California News, computers are ready for the fastest vote count in the West. This article is from October the 17th, 1966, which is 2 years before the 68 election. And they were getting these computers ready for the fastest vote count in the West. California newsmen and wire service representatives were given an advance peek at the electronic election coverage of the future at a news conference held by executives of the News Election Service in L.A. last week. J. Richard Imers, executive director of NES, a cooperative vote collecting and tabulating agency formed by ABC, Associated Press, CBS, NBC, and United Press International, demonstrated how the organization will use twin computers to tabulate election returns from 11 Western states on November the 8th. Mr. Imers pointed out that the News Election Service, Mr. Imers pointed out that, I forgot how to read a newspaper. Mr. Imers pointed out that the system could be used to report and tabulate returns on the upcoming senatorial, gubernatorial, and congressional races as a prototype of a plan that will be used to cover the entire country during the presidential elections of 1968. It's expected to result in the fastest and most accurate vote counting in history. Also attending the news conference and demonstration was Frank J. Jordan, NES Board of Managers member and manager of election planning for NBC. Mr. Jordan explained that NES will have a reporter in each of the 411 counties of the 11 states and in each of some 24,000 precincts. Under the new NES system, each of these reporters will phone information and vote count tabulations directly to two large collection centers in LA instead of to the individual state capitals. Now, this is where they got interesting. Twin RCA 301 computers located at Tabulating Consultants Inc. LA will digest the information into a network of 7 high-speed teletypes, relay the latest count every 5 minutes back to the individual states and to NES subscribers. So what was happening was it was going through this system, right? And then it was supposed to go to the main tabulating computer, which was set up in Rockefeller Center, which was going to give the results, right? And something went wrong with those two computers in Rock Center the night of the election. And so it was late into the night, and the popular vote count was super close, within a couple of 100,000. And then all of a sudden Nixon wins Illinois, and it's over. But there was a half-hour point where this is just a little bit on the voter news service, which is what the National Election Service turned into. And that was an exit polling consortium formed in 1990 by the 6 major news media. So you have news media consolidating all the information, right? Nobody else can give you the news results except them. At these times in 68, there's no outside, there's not all the internet where you can go on and find 6 different guys who are covering the elections and have their own map and, breaking it down their own way. It's just these guys giving you the data. So, and this also goes into a little bit the dissemination of election returns information, the News Election Service, and it gives a little background here, which I thought was interesting. In 1964, the Associated Press, ABC News, CBS News, NBC, and United Press International formed a consortium called the News Election Service. That was designed to collect one set of election returns for the entire United States. Study was made of NES operations during the presidential election year of 1980 to determine, 1, the nature of the structural organization of NES and how that organization enhanced or inhibited information dissemination. 2, how election returns were disseminated on election night. 3, how accurate those returns were. And 4, the potential impact of NES on the electoral process. Data were gathered through participant observation of NES activities and through interviews with NES executives and managers in 3 different locations. The resulting data revealed that NES is a complex organization that seems to be essential to election returns dissemination. So again, here's all these the big boys getting together and they say, hey, here's the data. It's going to come through us. Here's how we're going to disseminate it to you. This is an article about the election night, and I just wanted to read it to you because I think it's kind of interesting, and it does show that this event happened. And it's from the Spokesman Review, Thursday morning, November the 7th, 1968. Out of Spokane, Washington. Thursday, November 7th, 1968. Vote computers revolt during crucial night. New York. In the grand ballroom of the New Yorker Hotel, with its crystal chandeliers, carpeting, and hundreds of telephones, shifts of workers Wednesday checked the results of the 1968 election. It was a bizarre climax, a statistical hangover to one of the most turbulent elections in U.S. history. Quote, we don't have any reason to doubt the totals we put out, unquote, said J. Richard Imers, executive director of the vast computer network established by the major news media to speed election results. We're checking the totals out and checking them back. We're going to verify the stuff. We're going to validate the returns so we don't embarrass anybody. We're reconstituting the whole election. We're calling every county clerk in the country, but as of now, Imers assured, there is no reason to doubt the returns we distributed to the public, unquote. Imers, a tall, soft-spoken, gray-haired man, slouched in his chair from fatigue. I'm 50. Today I'm 80, he said. It had been a tiring 24 hours. During the height of the vote-counting election night, the giant computers used by the News Election Service, NES, began to spew out erratic data, reporting, for example, that Dick Gregory, fourth-party candidate, was polling 9 million votes. Oh, it was 9 million, not 9%. Okay, my bad. 9 million votes in Pennsylvania, which is a huge number. Elsewhere, the computers reported returns from 600 precincts in one county, when actually the county only had 200, all clearly wrong. As the errors flowed faster, it became clear there was major trouble, so major that the 2 main computers used by the News Election Services had to be shut down. Harried NES executives shifted to a secondary system of slower computers in 7 states. For a time, there was doubt that the figures which had been used to inform millions of television viewers and newspaper readers and the candidates themselves were accurate. Imers announced during the height of the crisis shortly before 1 a.m., quote, we are getting such total variations in the individual states that I consider the total being produced by the main computer system not reliable beyond question. We are going to shut down the transmission from the prime system and wait for the totals from the regional system to overtake them. There may be a period of 30 minutes without vote totals. So With this word, some television network executives backed away from projecting winners. Some citizens sent telegrams to the networks asking who won and what would happen if the extremely close presidential race wound up in the Electoral College. And what was the reaction of Richard Imers, closeted with 2 troubled computers in a 4th-floor room at Rockefeller Center? Quote, just despair, he said later. We'd been testing since January, the day before election. The thing worked perfectly with simulated data. The backup computers, never designed for speed, fed results to newspapers and the network slowly. And because of this slowness, the cliffhanger became even more so. And actually, I was watching like data of it, and it's on YouTube. Video, and it was like 2:30 in the morning, and they were still not sure, or around that time when the final vote was like in Illinois came through right after that. So it was pretty late in the night. Backup computers in New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Cincinnati, Dallas, St. Louis, and Los Angeles finally filled the need. One executive of the national broadcasting company saw some light in all the darkness. Quote, I'm glad it was an error for Dick Gregory rather than some subtle thing, he said. The errors were dramatically wrong. It didn't take long to tell. What was wrong? The technician spent all day Wednesday checking. Imers said the trouble had been traced to a programming error. In other words, wrong information originally had been fed, perhaps months back, into NES's giant computers. It's something buried within a very complicated program designed to do a huge job, moaned an aide, said Imers. There was no machine failure. It was that simple little problem within the programmer. It was a human failure. So I think that was super interesting. The fact that during the 68 election, there's a half-hour period where the results are in dispute. The system that these guys had put into place didn't work. It malfunctioned so bad that it spit out that Dick Gregory got 9 million votes in Pennsylvania. So if that was not true, then how did it do that? And why did it do it? And this all gets back to the same thing that's going on now, which is you have a system that runs a certain software from certain companies, and both the system and the software are suspect. And the GEM system is also suspect because it can be manipulated and we know that if anything is left online. But this is before stuff was left online. And this is the second closest election, by the way, besides Kennedy versus Nixon. It's the second closest election besides that one. And you have a suspect, an instance where something unusual happens, and there's really no explanation that, oh, well, it's just a programming error, and that's all they gave them, and the people just accepted that. And this was one of the closest elections ever in our history, and Nixon ended up winning this election. And, did he really win it? It's hard to say, right? Because, now we know that how much, fraud is on these things, and they had started doing big computers in the 50s with vote tallying and ballot counting. You could look up like the Univac computer. I looked into that a little bit. So anyway, sorry for this long video, guys, but I was working on this dig for the 1968 election at the time, and then I saw Sidney Powell's, and I thought, well, there's a lot of similarities in these two things and the time period and what's going on, and now we have another similarity with a new voting system, with the voting system that was in place back then that was somewhat new, and it was also suspect. So, with that, I'll try to include some of the links in this to the article and stuff, and you can look it over. I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day. This is Ash, WATN, signing off.